This time I'm not in Scotland, but I have a Scottish film here in Hamburg, and my guest today is Kirk Jones, and you're here with your film I Swear, or as it's called in German, Verflucht Normal. Before we dive deeper into your film, can you tell our viewers in just a few words what the film is about?
The film is a true story of a gentleman called John Davidson. And I first became aware of John's story in 1989 when he was 15 years old, and he was discovering that he was experiencing the onset of Tourette-Syndrom. He's had the most extraordinary life, and I've followed him for many, many years. And about 4 years ago, I contacted him and asked if he would be interested in me making a film, a feature film of his life story.
Why was now the right time to adapt the story into a feature film?
I think we are at a stage where there's a lot of talk about neurodiverse conditions, and I think it's important for people to remember that Tourette's is a neurodiverse condition, as well as autism and OCD, high anxiety, ADHD, and I think that on occasions in the past, people have not been as respectful as they should have been to people with Tourette syndrome in particular. It's important for people to remember that someone who has Tourette's, who shouts and swears, only represents about 15% of people who have Tourette's. So I saw it as a good opportunity to not only entertain people, hopefully make them laugh, hopefully make them cry, hopefully uplift them, but at the same time, very subtly, educate them about a neurodiverse condition.
And you totally succeeded by doing that. To what extent was John Davidson involved in the writing and the filming to ensure that his story remained authentic?
Really, from day one, from the first 30 minutes that I spent with John, he expressed a concern that over the years, people from the Tourette community had not been treated with as much respect as they should have done, whether that was by comedians on stage or whether it was, in the newspaper or press or TV or radio. People with Tourette's were often invited to go on shows on the understanding that they could educate people about their condition, but actually they realized that the reason why they'd been invited on there was to have a laugh and a joke at them. So when I realized that, I said to John, okay, I'm going to make you an executive producer. And of course, he said, I'm not sure what that means, because it was a new term to him. And I said, it means that you will have a voice, you will have an opinion, that you will be listened to. And I said, I promise you, I will give you every 20 pages of the script as I write them. And when I finish the film, I will make sure that you see it first. And if I've got anything wrong at all, I'll do everything in my power to put it right. I want you to be really, really proud of this film. And that's what we did. John wasn't on set. He visited a couple of times. But because Robert Aramayo was keen to really focus on his own interpretation of John's character, I think it would have been very confusing for John to be on set as well. So John didn't spend much time on set, but I did consult with him all the way along to make sure that I wasn't making the kind of mistakes that some people had made in the past.
You went from beautiful independent productions like Waking Dead Divine to studio productions like Nanny McPhee and The Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. Compared to big Hollywood productions, I Swear feels like a very personal labor of love. To what extent did the smaller budget give you more creative freedom?
I was given complete and total creative freedom. Not a lot of people are aware, but in order to make this film, my wife and I sold our house and we put everything on the line and borrowed the money to make the film, which is a golden rule that you never ever break in the film industry. You should never put your own money into a film. But after a couple of early meetings, I realized that if we went to a traditional source of finance, then I wasn't going to be able to tell a truthful and honest story about John's life. And I'd promised him that that's what I would do. But I'd also promised myself, because having made films for 25 years, I was very aware of how you know, a project that starts off as being very exciting can suddenly be kind of, you know, dumbed down by pages and pages of notes. So I made that commitment, and it meant that I could cast whoever I wanted. It meant that I could write whatever I wanted, edit whatever I wanted. And it was an extraordinary experience, and one that I hope I get the chance to repeat again.
But were there still people during the development or filming process that tried to convince you that you couldn't do this one this way or the other way?
No, there was no one. I had absolutely no one. There was no one above me. I had the most incredible crew and production. We all knew why we were there. We were there to honour John Davidson and his life story. And that's what made us jump out of bed in the morning. And there was no pressure externally on any other level.
You just mentioned your enormous personal sacrifice by selling your house. Did that affect your stress level or your passion on set?
There was a new pressure that I wasn't used to before, which because my wife and I were financing the film. I remember on day one we had a problem with the weather, and she called me and she said, "How's it going?" And we hadn't filmed for about 3 hours. And I said, not only have we not filmed, but everyone seems to be eating a lot of biscuits. And I was aware for the first time in my career of how many biscuits were getting eaten, because I thought, I'm paying for those biscuits. No, it was the most incredible experience. And every night when I went home, having shot, I was so grateful that my wife and I had decided to make that level of commitment, to give me the freedom and the crew and the cast the freedom to do a film that I really thought was, you know, going to be quite different and interesting and fresh.
Most people call your film frank, funny, and touching, and I would totally agree. Other films about this subject, as you mentioned before, mostly make fun about the tics and laugh about the
condition. Yeah.
Which you never do, not even once. And how difficult was it to find the humor without undermining the seriousness of the illness?
I spent a lot of time with John Davidson. I listened to his life stories, and I ordered them, and I expanded on them, and I checked the details with him. And for me, it was very clear when I was listening to his stories. Some stories made me want to cry. Some stories I thought were hilarious. Some stories were really emotional. And I decided to simply present those stories in the film as John had told them to me, and just trust my own instinct that if I found something funny, hopefully the audience would find it funny. If I was moved emotionally, then they would be moved emotionally. So really it came from John, from his memory of what happened and how I reacted to it when he told me.
And Robert Aramayo, he delivers a phenomenal performance. How did he and John Davidson work together to capture the physical intensity of the tics so precisely?
For Rob to have delivered that performance, he needed about 3 months. He always told me that's what he would need. And he lived with John, so he was gardening with John, he was going to the shops with John, walking the dog with John, watching TV, asking John questions all the time about, why do you do this, why do you do that? I know from Rob's perspective, he didn't just want to focus on the tics and on the Tourette's. He wanted to get to know John Davidson as someone aside from this condition. And I think he did that in the weeks that he had with him. Rob worked with a dialogue coach, but also a movement coach as well. And I didn't see Robert Aramayo act as John Davidson until day one of shooting. I trusted his process. I knew how hard he was working. I knew how much research he was doing. And again, because I'd financed this film with my wife, I could do whatever I wanted to do. And that felt like the most respectful, trusting thing that I could do for Rob.
He also mentioned that he had the freedom to incorporate tics or screams at any time that weren't in the script. So how does this spontaneity affect the dynamic on set and his work with other actors like Peter Mullan or Maxine Peake?
I think one of the first questions Rob asked me was, do you expect me to tick exactly what you've scripted at exactly that point every take? And we agreed between the two of us that Tourette's is so unpredictable. It's like lightning. You just do not know what's coming next. That what that would do would deliver a fairly flat, a fairly flat film, because everyone would know what was coming next. No one would be surprised, and that isn't what Tourette's is. That isn't the energy that Tourette's has. So I said to Rob, absolutely, feel free to tick or not tick sometimes, change the ticks, change the position of the ticks. And of course, what that did was not only make Rob's performance feel spontaneous, but it kept all the other actors on their toes. So Peter Mullan, for example, very, very experienced, had no idea what was coming next. And most of the things that you see Peter reacting to in the film were a complete surprise to him because it was improvised. Although having said that, because Rob spoke to so many people who had Tourette's in the run-up to filming, he heard a lot of ticks. And if he heard a tick that he liked, he'd write it down. And he even said that he had asked people their permission to use their own ticks. So the fact that some of the scenes were improvised was, I think, worked to our advantage.
Speaking of Peter Mullan, I'm a big lover of Scotland. I regularly went to the Edinburgh International Film Festival since 2015, and also traveled through the Highlands and the Islands and on many occasions.
Wow.
But what I love the most is the rough Scottish warmth. And Peter Mullan's character, Tommy Trotter, absolutely reminded me of that.
Yeah.
He's one of the few people who accept John without prejudice from the very beginning and help him regain his dignity by giving him his first job in the community centre. When casting Tommy, did you immediately think of Peter Mullan to portray the blend of rough and rumble Scottish warmth and unwavering loyalty?
I did. I've been a fan of Peter Mullan for many, many years, and I knew that he had those qualities, kind of, sometimes people in the UK call it a rough diamond. It's like, a huge heart, but coming across as being quite difficult or antagonistic, and I thought it just feels like Peter Mullan, right from the beginning. So we only had Peter for 3 days. He made a huge contribution to the film and to the production, but we only had him there for 3 days, to work with.
I love it when I'm able to learn something new through a film, which I didn't realize before, as you mentioned at the beginning of our interview, that not everyone with Tourette-Syndrome has verbal tics. So did you come across something while you were writing the screenplay, or maybe even during the filming, that you didn't know before?
I came across many, many things. Within seconds of meeting John Davidson, he reminded me to ignore the tics, but not the person. That was one thing. I remember someone saying to me, remember that your normal is not necessarily the same as everybody else's normal. And that was a really important thing to me as well. But yeah, I met a lot of people from the Tourette's community. It reminded me that only 15% of people swear. And I think if you asked anyone what their view of Tourette's is, they would say, oh, it's people who swear. And that's not true. 85% of people are living their lives on a daily basis, struggling with a condition that might be very difficult to see. It might be high anxiety. It might be blinking. It might be a physical tic. It could be many, many, many things. So I hope when people have watched the film, not only will they have laughed and cried and been uplifted and entertained, but that they will take away a level of education, not just about Tourette's syndrome, but about all neurodiverse conditions. Because very few people, or perhaps no one, just has Tourette's. They have Tourette's. John has a level of autism, of OCD, of ADHD, and this is a very complex condition, which is very difficult to describe for any one person.
let's get back to the film. Before going back to the 1980s, the film starts in 2019 with John being honored by Queen Elizabeth as a member of the Order of the British Empire. I think that's a very strong beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm not questioning that. But at what point in the writing process did you make the decision for exactly this beginning?
To begin with, I listened to John for days. I ordered everything. I had a huge document which is about 200 pages long. And then I started to tell the story in order. But it was really important to me that people understood that they had permission to laugh in the film at moments where Tourette's just delivers something which is completely unexpected, which is harmless, but is actually on occasions really quite funny. So I decided to take a scene that was 3/4 of the way into the production and put it right at the beginning, and let people know that they had permission to laugh during this film. And I've seen John Davidson introduce the film himself live in different screenings. And one of the things he says is, please feel free to laugh. You can laugh, you can cry, you can jump up and down, do whatever you want to do in this film. But, there are elements and there are times when Tourette's can really be quite funny.
The story takes place in Galashiels in the Scottish Lowlands. How important was it to shoot the film there?
We were unable to shoot there physically because of the cost of production. There's a very low budget. And of course, if we'd have shot there, we would have had to travel all the crew in hotels and brought the equipment in. So what we decided to do was look for an area which was similar to Galashiels, and we found that north of Glasgow. And of course, Glasgow is a very strong film production base. So we used local crew and local sourced equipment. But it was very important to me to present the idea of Galashiels being its own character. It's very important to John. He's loved there by most people within the community. And I just wanted to try and get that right. To such extent that when I was looking for locations, I would often photograph them and send them directly to John and say, could this be Galashiels? Is this believable? And he'd tell me whether it would or wouldn't.
Lovely. There is a powerful moment in the film where Tommy testifies on John's behalf in court and passionately argues about that John's condition can't be a hoax. So how much of that emotional weight came directly from Peter Mullan during filming, and how did she help to ground the social relevance of that scene?
I think when John was young, and even still on occasions, people think that he's faking it, that he's making it up, especially when he was younger as well. And that's not the case. That's 100% not the case. It's kind of the opposite of what Tourette's is. It's completely and totally uncontrollable, and it very rarely reflects the beliefs of the person. It's normally completely the opposite. So what I wrote in the court scene was there to reflect that and to remind people how crazy it would be to pretend that you had Tourette's, to be beaten up, to be threatened, to be isolated, to not be able to take your exams at school, which is what happened to John, to not be able to have a partner. It's insane to suggest that John has or ever was making it up, or anyone with Tourette's is making it up, because it can be a really miserable life with living with a condition like this.
I believe that in most cases, a limited budget and a limited shooting schedule have a positive effect on the film, since it challenges you creatively in some areas. But just hypothetically speaking, would you have done anything different if you had, let's say, all the time in the world and an infinite amount of money?
Well, on reflection, the answer is no, because I'm really thrilled with the film. I'm just looking back and thinking if there was anything in pre-production that I was unhappy with because we didn't have the time. I don't think so. Maybe I would have asked for more time with Peter Mullan. Maybe I would have asked for a slightly longer schedule to take a little bit of pressure off the crew. but other than that, I think, I think you're right. I think often when you're told there's no money, get on with it, then, people come up with really creative, inventive solutions.
I wouldn't change a single thing
Good.
on that film. So it took you now over 3 decades to bring John Davidson's story to the screen, and you risk everything personally to do so. After the emotional feat and the huge success, is it now difficult for you to devote yourself to a new, perhaps lighter project like the live adaptation of Mr. Ben, or has I Swear changed your approach to directing completely?
It's always interesting what the next project is, no matter what's happened before. I thought for some time I was going to be looking at another project which was in many ways similar to I Swear, but then I was approached with an idea and it just felt right. And it's hard to explain. It's a bit like, when you buy a house, sometimes you might have seen 30 houses or apartments and you can't explain why they don't feel right, and then you turn up outside of one, and before you even walk through the door, it just feels like the right thing for you. So it's a little bit like film projects with me, and I've been saying no, and then something came in, I thought, I think I can see that being really interesting and really relevant in a modern world. So that's what I've dived into next.
So the next is Mr. Ben. What can you tell me about it? At what stage is the development right now, and have you decided who's going to play the title?
It's really early days. I haven't properly started writing. I'm about to. Promoting and supporting I Swear around the world has taken up the last 8 months of my life, so I'm almost finished, and I will start writing. Mr. Ben was a children's TV series which was started in 1972 and ran for about 20 years, I think, on BBC. Essentially, it's about a very simple man, very kind man who you could consider to have a relatively boring life. But when he goes into a fancy dress shop and he tries on outfits, he is transported into another time and another place in history, or to a fantasy world. And when I look back over it, he often is confronted by serious problems which appear to be unsurmountable, unsolvable, but with common sense and with care and with dignity, he solves problems very, very simply. And I feel that at this moment in time, there are an awful lot of problems in the world which could be very easily solved with common sense and empathy and respect for other people. And that's it. And so that's why I'm interested. But I've hardly started writing, so it could be a while.
I'm really looking forward to that film.
Good.
Me too. I'll have to watch I Swear a couple of times. More times.
Amazing.
So thank you for this beautiful film. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good luck with the film. Good luck with the Hamburg premiere tonight.
Yeah.
And hope to see you next time.
You will. Thank you very much. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay.